listening to the Film Yappers, the podcast where two film buffs, with too many opinions and just enough credentials, dive deep into the movies you love. The ones you hate, the ones you pretend to have seen, or the ones you are ashamed to admit that you love. From cult classics to fresh releases, they break down what works, what doesn't, and why it matters, one reel at a time. Dr. William Wells, intellectual historian and culture critic, is joined by his co-host and independent filmmaker Ethan Korpinen. Yappers, take it away.
Welcome back to the Film Yappers. We're here to discuss another breakup film. Our last film, Possession, that we discussed was a divorce breakup film. This is a very different kind of breakup movie. It's about two mates, two male friends having a falling out, which I've noticed, by the way, is kind of like a subgenre that's been emerging in the 2020s, like this and the Banshees of Inisherin. That's been a common trope in movies. Like, I'm not saying it hasn't happened before, but it's rare for a movie to carve out an entire runtime to just that as like its A
True,
plot, you know?
true.
So that kind of helps this movie stand out. This is also our first A24 movie, if you couldn't tell by the background. So the film bros who are subbed to our channel are really gonna like that. If there's anything wrong with my background, just let us know in the comments so I can maybe. Friendship came out this year. I think it's one of the best films that's come out in 2025 this far. It's very funny. It's kind of melancholic. Not what I was expecting from a movie starring Tim Robinson from I Think You Should Leave, but it definitely made me feel things. Amazing show, by the way. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on Netflix.
If you
Three
haven't
seasons.
watched, I think you should leave. There's something wrong with you, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you should be ashamed. Yeah.
You should be ashamed.
Parents should disown you, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
This was directed by Andrew DeYoung. I think he worked with SNL for a little bit, as did Tim Robinson. I think that's how they met. And then Tim
hmm
Robinson kind of had a bit of a surge in popularity when he did his own show, which we already talked about. I think you should leave. It's a sketch comedy show, and Tim Robinson kind of plays a variation of the same character in all of them. For the most part, I think there's a few where he kind of plays the straight man character, but usually his character is someone who's very whiny, pathetic, impatient, and he's thrown into like this normal situation and he acts like a fool, and it's just kind of like cringe inducing and very awkward and kind of hard to sit through. And that's what makes it so funny. And I think
Yes,
a lot
yes.
of that humor kind of translates to this film as well. It stars Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd. Tim Robinson kind of plays this middle-aged suburban dad. He's married to this woman named Tammy, played by Kate Mara. He has a teenage son as well. Essentially, they're in the process of moving. His wife, you find out in the opening scene, was battling cancer. So she's a cancer survivor. So they're in the process of moving to a different neighborhood, and Tim Robinson's character, Craig, receives a mysterious package that was actually meant for his next door neighbor that he has never met before. I think he's new to the neighborhood, and this new neighbor is played by Paul Rudd. His name is Austin, and they kind of strike up a bit of a friendship, a bit of a kinship, and I think Craig sees a lot of. I don't know. I think he starts to find some starts to feel kind of like close to someone for the first time in a
Mm.
while that he's not related to, and
That's not his wife.
that's not his wife. Yeah, exactly. So, and I think Paul Rudd's character kind of helps him see a new side of life and everything, and it's going really well. Paul Rudd's character Austin has kind of his own group of guys that he hangs out with. He decides to invite Craig over to his house one night to kind of chill with the guys, see how well he kind of gels with their group and everything. And it doesn't go well at all. Basically the worst way it could have possibly gone is how it plays out. After this disaster introduction, Craig tries to talk to Austin again, and Austin's kind of like, "Hey, we had a couple good hangs, but I think it's best if we go our separate ways." And this drives Craig absolutely mad, and he borderline like stalks this guy after that, and causes all kind of dramatic problems
He
with
can't let it go.
can't let it go. Absolutely.
Paul Rudd's character said, I think you should leave, and he didn't. I don't know how planned the friendship sort of trial was, or I don't know if Austin was really just testing him out, or really it just went sideways at that one moment, and then he just decided, well, you know, I'm done with this guy. He doesn't fit in. More of almost a spur of the moment thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But um but he's not a perfect character too. He's,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, Paul Rudd, everybody loves Paul Rudd in real life. It's why he's a perfect actor for this part,
Mhm.
because he is, as someone put it, effortlessly charming. I mean, how can you not like Paul Rudd? It's kind of like, how can you not like Tom Holland? They're just people that have kind of that charisma that's natural, that makes you just want to like them and, be friends with them. And so it's painful to see someone who desperately is looking for this connection and then it's denied.
Yeah.
It's Lucy snatching away the football from Charlie Brown.
The director had kind of like a real life situation where he befriended someone. I think this was during the pandemic, you were saying. I feel like you kind of know more about this
Well, I don't,
than
but
I do.
it was just that he said the idea for this came from an incident in the pandemic where, I guess, a guy that he was trying to connect with as a friend kind of just said, um, I think we should go our separate ways. He broke up with him as a friend, and so he used that for inspiration for this film.
Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
There's some cinematic influences. A few that I'm like that, I wouldn't have even thought of that had, had the director not even mentioned it. But apparently when he pitched this idea to Tim Robinson, he said that he wanted to shoot it like the film The Master, which came out in 2012, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's a drama set in like the 50s, very loosely inspired by Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard and all of that. But I can kind of see what he means by that. In both films, there's a bit of like a push and pull kind of power dynamic going on with the two of them that's pretty interesting. So like there's something there, there's something there.
I would never have guessed that.
No, no, neither would I. Yeah, but
I
I
would
can kind
never
of
have
see it.
guessed
I
that.
feel like there are a couple of scenes that are even staged in a similar way. Like the prison cell scene is
Mhm.
pretty similar to the scene where Joaquin Phoenix is thrown in jail, and right next to him is Philip Seymour Hoffman, and they get in that shouting match from.
Right.
Yeah, so a little similar there, the setup of that scene. Another one that I think of, and this is not actually one that anyone involved in the film has mentioned, but I think it's worth mentioning because I did think of it the first time I was watching it. Back to Paul Thomas Anderson, he did a film with Adam Sandler called Punch Drunk Love. Paul Thomas Anderson was a really big fan of his movies, and he kind of saw this almost like man-child vulnerability in the characters that he played, and he kind of wrote a character just kind of around that. So that's kind of like where the ideation, the inception of that film came from, was how Paul Thomas Anderson viewed kind of the Adam Sandler persona in his films. And I wonder if there's something like similar that occurred between the director of this film and Tim Robinson. I wonder if Andrew DeYoung saw
Hmm.
like some weird vulnerability in the characters that Tim Robinson played, and was just thinking like, I'm going to place him in this character in kind of a real world scenario, or a film that feels closer to a drama, and just see how he kind of reacts to it. And that's kind of what this film feels like to me.
It occurred to me very recently that it's kind of a similar movie
Okay.
to one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Mhm.
What About Bob? Which
Oh,
is Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss, and it's a much more lighthearted movie, though there is definitely a dark dimension to it as well. But it's about a psychiatrist who has a patient. He's a very famous psychiatrist or psychologist, maybe clinical psychologist,
mhm.
um, who's treating Bill Murray's character, who has all sorts of neuroses and things, and um, Bob is the name of the character, and Bob just becomes obsessed with the psychiatrist, and he's trying to get away from him, and he goes on a vacation, and he shows up at his vacation house, and it's so in another context it would be a horror movie, but
Yeah.
it's definitely not,
Mhm.
because everyone around Bob loves Bob. He's such a friendly, nice, earnest, naive, all the same kind of character as as Craig. He's the same kind of character, but instead it's how he's received. And Richard Dreyfuss's character becomes angrier and angrier at how even his family, his friends, they all like Bob. I think the final straw is when his sister starts maybe falling in love with Bob, and it sends him over the edge. And it's a great, fantastic movie. Uh, I don't think you and I have ever talked about it. We need to watch it
Okay,
sometime,
yeah, I've never seen
uh,
it.
and maybe a good future episode. But
Yeah,
it's kind of an inversion of this movie, and
interesting. Okay.
it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were thinking about this movie in some places, because once I thought about it, it was like, oh wow, there's so many parallels. It's just that instead of us feeling we're all on Bob's side, I'll just
Mhm.
put it that way, the film is not on Richard Dreyfuss's side. You know, in Friendship, I think I think the audience feels for both characters in a way, because
Yeah,
you see that he's lonely. You see that Craig just wants the human connection, but you also can relate to sometimes people get obsessed with you and you need to step away or put some distance there.
yeah.
Um, and there's not necessarily a right way to do that.
I've actually never seen this film, but it was actually used as like a pull quote from like a critic,
Oh,
used
okay.
in the trailers. People, one of the pull quotes described this movie as like "I love you, man" for sickos. The movie, which by the way, also has Paul Rudd. I think Paul Rudd is
Right,
the
right. Isn't
character
it
in the film.
him and Jason?
Jason Segel, yeah,
Yeah.
or Jason Segel, I think is how you pronounce it. But
I
it's
don't care because I'll never watch it.
but like I wonder if like that was like an inspired casting for this film because the dynamic apparently is very similar. I think in fact the setup of this movie from what I know about I Love You Man is very similar to I Love You Man. And I think it just takes a dark kind of, U-turn 180 once the
Or
breakup occurs.
fatal attraction,
Maybe, yeah.
fatal attraction for two guys.
Yeah,
There's just no romantic component there.
right.
And there's definitely not. That's not what's going on here, if you're wondering.
Yeah.
Um,
But real quick, back to what you were saying about, just relating this film to real life and when someone gets like super obsessed with you or when you become like obsessed with like a new friend or whatever, the person kind of has to like put some distance in between you. It is interesting, like with this film and Banshees of Sharon, part of what really drew me to both of those movies is like I feel like I've been on both sides of that equation
oh yeah,
where I've
I
like
think
had a
I,
friend tell me like I don't really want to talk to you anymore, like or no one's ever said that to me, but like friends kind of
Yikes.
no, no one's ever said that
Yikes.
to me, but like friends sometimes
Yikes.
drift apart. Do you know what I mean? Like they sometimes just you just don't talk to someone for a couple years, and when you try to strike up like a conversation, it just feels kind of cold and like maybe this isn't really worth continuing. That's just life, and
I think that's a Gen Z thing, not a Gen X thing.
it happens.
We
People.
we we hang on to our friendships no matter what. And um, as as Bruce, a friend of mine, was saying the other day, he was talking about a mutual friend of ours that says, 20 years could go by without having a conversation, but then you talk to them and then it's just like it was yesterday. Interesting thing about this, if we were to point out the genre, because it is certainly a comedy, they marketed this as a dark comedy. In fact, one of the trailers is depicts it in almost a horror film sense.
Oh,
But here's the really interesting thing that I haven't noticed about another film so far. I'm not saying this is the first time, but it's the first I'm aware of, is it's marketed as a psychological satire. That's a term I've never heard before.
the first trailer that came out. Was trying really hard to sell this as like almost like this Ari Aster like hereditary type movie, but
Yeah.
it just looked like the funniest thing like ever, It's like it was trying really hard to convince you like this is the most screwed up movie like of all time. And I was just watching the trailer thinking that this looks hilarious. I don't know. Like I burst out laughing in the trailer. There's a moment like right after the bit where it's kind of showcasing Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson hanging out, like the beginning of their friendship. It cuts to this like snowy shot of like this telephone pole, and the pull quote is like an absolute nightmare, and I just burst out laughing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that trailer, by the
It's
way.
great. Yeah.
It-
There are definitely scenes that feel right out of like I think you should leave. There's even a couple of scenes that feel like if you just stripped them away from the context of the film itself, it could just be its own little isolated like sketch that you could just add to that
hmm
show.
hmm
There's a scene with Connor O'Malley in particular that feels like a sketch from I Think You Should Leave.
It
It's just
does. It
hilarious.
does. One of the funniest moments in the movie.
The scene that occurs kind of at the end of the film when Craig breaks into Austin's house,
Oh yeah, yeah.
crashes into his car, comes in with
That
the
definitely
golden
would.
the golden handgun that he stole earlier when he broke into Austin's house. That scene to me feels like ripped out of I Think You Should Leave. It feels like a sketch. I also think the opening scene feels a bit like a sketch. They're at some like cancer survivor like support group. I think that's what it is. It's a really short scene,
hmm
but it's
hmm
it's Tammy Kate Mara's character kind of explaining like that she's describing that she's anxious that it might come back. She's like, will I ever get to see my son graduate? And um I'm just quoting the film, but she asks like, "Will I ever orgasm again?" And it cuts to Tim Robinson looking over like, "Wait, what?" I think this is a really good introduction to how Tim Robinson's character kind of gets in his own way at times. He's very eager to please and all that, and the scene kind of ends where there's like an awkward silence, and after Kate Mara finishes her speech about being a cancer survivor, and then he kind of just jumps in like. Oh, and my orgasms have been great, by the way, to kind of like make everyone laugh. And it's just like he's met with crickets.
I don't like that it was nakedly product placement, but the subway hallucination scene.
Totally.
There's a moment where he ends up taking a hallucinogenic trip, and in the process, it becomes sort of a 5 minute commercial
Kind
for
of. Yeah.
for Subway.
Another form of product placement in the movie is Marvel Studios. They keep referencing this Marvel movie. They don't say which one it is, but it's even in the trailer. Tim Robinson, Craig asks Tammy at one point.
There's a new Marvel out that's supposed to be nuts. We should go see that.
And what I find really funny about it is like it seems like every character in this film is a fan of Marvel, but the way they talk about the Marvel movies, it feels like the way a boomer who's seen like one Marvel movie refers to like Marvel, who maybe knows about like one or two characters like the Hulk or something like that. Because they always call it a Marvel, like
He says it's a Marvel. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
There's
I
even a
can't wait
scene.
to see the new Marvel.
Yeah, there's even a scene where t Craig is like pitching some like he's going through like a slideshow and the mayor is in the boardroom and he's like pitching him something and I think one of the other guys is going through the slideshow and he's photoshopped the mayor onto like some superhero outfit and the mayor
Right.
just goes like, "Hey, I kind of look like a Marvel there."
So, are there any moments in the film that made you cringe out of your skin?
Oh my God, where do I even begin? The first time Austin invites Craig over to see his friends.
So they're sitting around and sort of having this male bonding moment, and they start singing a song together,
Mhm.
and you can tell that Craig is really just sort of amazed, like I've never seen a bunch of friends be this supportive and friendly together. I've never seen anything like this. And then the next thing you know, they're sort of horsing around and he accidentally punches he punches Austin way too hard. And so everyone is horrified and shocked and they don't understand why he's done this. And so when he realizes he's messed up, instead of being apologetic, he grabs a bar of soap and starts eating it. And it's horrifying.
I think for me, like the way I kind of took that scene is he realized that he really screwed up and he was like the only way for me to kind of again it's like a way of what I was saying earlier his way of
Overcorrect.
overcorrecting
Yes.
when
Yes.
he creates an awkward situation. He's
Yeah.
like if I put myself through this kind of humiliation ritual it might ease the tension, like people might find it funny. And I think
Sure.
you were saying while we were watching it, like if like a close friend of yours had done something like that, you probably would have found it funny.
Oh yeah, I would have
But
just
but it just doesn't work because he just met these
he
guys.
just met them.
It's just
Yeah,
not really the
yeah.
type of humor that you use with people that you literally just met like 30 minutes ago, right? A lot of the things that Austin introduces Craig to, Craig kind of tries to introduce that to like other people in his life, like his son, his wife, the whole scene where Austin takes Craig to like the forest and he
Mhm.
picks up a mushroom and just eats it. It's like just eat a wild mushroom. The next scene, Craig is like, boiling mushrooms or whatever in his kitchen, and his wife's like, "What are you doing?" And
Incredibly sus.
yeah, and then he takes his son to that same like forest and he eats one of them, and his son's like, "Dad, I think those are poisonous or whatever." And then after that, they go to the mall to see that new Marvel they were talking about, and he throws up in his paper cup. So. Austin kind of shows Craig this kind of underground tunnel that leads to like a back entrance that goes to City Hall. It kind of feels like two middle school friends like going out and adventuring
Absolutely.
when their parents aren't
Absolutely.
home, kind of,
Yep.
or just
Yep.
like should go in the sewers or whatever. And he takes his wife to the same like sewer tunnel that Austin took him to in the beginning of the film, whereas his wife then gets lost and Craig has to call the police, like a search party to find his wife. It takes days to get her back, right? By the way, we're about to get into kind of some heavy spoilers here. So if you've not seen the film and you wish not to continue further before watching it, this is a good moment to stop watching the video, go watch the film, then come back. We're going to be talking about the final frame of the film, the final image, which is really interesting. So, to give you some context, at this point, once Tammy is found by the search party, she confesses to wanting to go move with Devin, her ex-boyfriend. This is after the kind of neighborhood party is thrown. Once Tammy's found, there's like a neighborhood party that's thrown. This is the Connor O'Malley scene. After that, she's like, I this relationship's just not working, and I want to go live with my ex-boyfriend and all that stuff, and this is kind of over. The way Tim Robinson starts to act around his wife once she kind of comes back from, because she says it's not permanent. It's like for a weekend or something like that, right? She comes back and he starts to like behave in a way that it feels a little closer to like how Austin acts. Like it's a little
Hmm.
more assertive. It's less like, hey, I'm just gonna sit there and take it kind of. And there's a scene where they're at a restaurant together and someone says something kind of rude to Tammy, and Craig stands up to him, and Tammy is like visibly kind of impressed by this, and the relationship Craig has with his son and his wife starts to transform for the better. It seems like things are going to kind of be okay. In fact, Tammy's even like, I'm not going to go back to Devin's house. I think we should just maybe watch a movie here tonight and spend time together. And if the film ended here, it would have been a pretty happy ending.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Craig's mind just can't get off of Austin, and he gets into his car, drives over to his house, and hits his car. That's parked out front, and then he breaks inside with the golden handgun and basically holds their entire friend group hostage.
At one point, um, Craig, I think out of a sense of probably just curiosity, sort of breaks into Austin's house. And I think he was just looking around and looking at some things, but he inadvertently steals a gun and can't put it back because Austin's family comes home. And so he leaves and he's basically stolen a gun from his friend's house and doesn't know how to put it back. So that will become significant for the climax of the film. Um, but another detail about Austin's character is that while he does appear to have everything together on the outside, he does have a shameful, shameful secret. And that is he is bald. And he is wearing a toupee that looks, fairly convincing. And there's a moment where it comes off earlier in the film. And the interesting thing is, he tells Craig, please don't let anyone know. And he's like, of course, never tell anyone. And he doesn't, which is kind of this important element to his character that he really is loyal. He really is, just because they have this conflict, he doesn't go nuclear in the sense of exposing his deepest secret. He goes nuclear in the sense of crashing his car into Austin's car, breaking into the house, and holding all of the friends at gunpoint.
At one point, Craig realizes that there's a new friend in the group that wasn't there the last time he hung out with him. He's like, "Wait, you guys got someone else, And it's like, well, what's his name?" And he goes like, "My name's Jimp." And he's like, "Huh?" It's like Jump, but with an I. And then I think the look on Craig's face, he looks so offended. It's like, this is the guy that you find to replace me, really? I think when Craig starts to kind of try to have a heart to heart, but he still has the gun in his hand. He kind of puts it by his side. Austin sees this as a good opportunity to kind of lunge at him and reach for the gun, which then backfires because Craig then fires around on the floor and in a kind of a struggle where Austin's trying to pull the gun away from him. And when Austin kind of falls to the floor, that's when his toupee falls off again. And Craig notices and is like, tries to kind of distract from that. None of his friends have seen it yet. So he just goes like
Right.
full, like, he just kind of goes full, like, kind of Rambo mode, like everyone on the ground, like goes like full bank robber mode. And so all of his friends are hiding behind the table, the counter. And so they kind of all duck down. So they don't see Austin putting back his toupee on. Police eventually arrive. Craig's thrown into the back of a cruiser, right? and Austin's talking to the officers, and his friends are kind of with him. And at one point, Austin kind of turns over to face Craig, and he winks at him, and Craig smiles. And so, like for me, I think that's kind of like, and by the way, that is the final exchange or shot of the film. He cut to the title card after that. The way I took that is basically Austin finally kind of understands Craig, and he almost kind of like respects him in a weird way that he kept his secret. And I think for me, I almost took it as like, hey, I'm going to bail you out of jail, and
I
sure if the
want to
friendship
believe
will
that.
continue, but I think he will kind of have his back in the
Yeah,
same way that Craig had his back in keeping a
yeah,
secret. So, what
yeah.
is your take on
I
that?
want to believe that. I want
Yeah.
to believe that.
Do you think their friendship will continue? That's what I
Yes,
really okay.
yes, but maybe at a moderated level.
Yeah, that's
So
kind of
maybe they're not hanging out all the time, but maybe they can slowly start to interact with each other
yeah. The only reason, and I don't want to sound,
after the justice system has run its course.
yeah, I want to remain hopeful, but the only thing that makes me a little hesitant to go like, oh yeah, they're going to be friends again is how does Austin explain that to his friend group? Like, hey, the guy that broke into into my house during like our get together and threatened us all with a gun, I'm hanging out with him again. He's actually a pretty chill guy. Like, how do you explain that to a group of people that were just traumatized like by this whole incident?
He's got the charisma. He can do it.
I
He said,
guess. I
"Hey,
don't know. They
we
might
have
think
to
he's kind
see
of
things.
crazy though.
We have to see this from his point of view."
Mhm.
And that's again, I imagine him having these conversations with those friends,
Yeah.
slowly bringing them around to say, "Okay, well, maybe he could hang out with us um, for the Super Bowl, or something."
Yeah.
But
You know what I think, and this is the last thing I'll say, but you just kind of made me realize something. I think part of it has to do with the fact that Austin, I think, is a little crazy himself.
yeah,
You know, because
well,
the whole thing is like on the exterior, he seems kind of like this normal, well put together, like kind of has it all figured out. Um,
that's right.
Carefree dude who's just kind of chill, goes with the
He
flow and
is
all that.
breaking into public buildings,
Yeah.
and that's criminal behavior.
Mhm.
There's the you have to wonder, why does he have a gold plated, you
Yeah.
know 50 caliber, what is it, like
Right.
a Desert Eagle or something?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
um
Yeah.
that's
Like a collector
that's
though.
not a that's per personal opinion, it's not a defensive weapon. That's a pull the trigger and eliminate someone kind of weapon.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Austin's a serial killer? Question mark.
I'm just
Would
saying that
explain the whole sewer thing, right? I
I
mean,
think that's someone has a Desert Eagle that is not in law enforcement or the military, or they have they don't actually have a security threat, or they're not a gun collector. I'm going to look askance at them and say, this person's deeply insecure,
yeah.
because that's the only reason why you would have a weapon like that.
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear that Craig forms a kinship with Austin because he kind of brings out the adventurous side of him, like kind of carefree about the world and just sort of go with the flow. And I think Craig, who's kind of a little more uptight, like it kind of just takes a lot of his anxiety away when he hangs out with someone like that. And I think he almost kind of wants to be like him, which is why he kind of introduces his family to a lot of the things that Austin introduces him to. Like, hey, we should go out and enjoy nature more. I want to go show you the sewer and all that stuff. And, I think he's kind of drawn to this adventurous side that Austin has. I think in the case of Austin, I think Craig represents a lot of like, the deep insecurities that Austin has that maybe he's afraid to show people, right? But like I think that's kind of why he likes hanging out with him because Craig is like is kind of unafraid to be a little weird and anxious and just I think Austin kind of likes that because he does see a bit of himself in him.
This is one of those rare movies that is really funny. It's got some really an interesting thing to say. It's a great one.
Yeah. And also watch I Think You Should Leave if you have not done that already. You will
Yes,
definitely not
yes.
regret it. It is hysterical. It's a very like niche kind of humor. I don't think it's gonna work for everyone. Like I do know some people that like that show quite a bit, but they do say that like some of the sketches aren't that funny.
That's fair to say. It's part of that comedy movement that was really kind of kicked off with Dollar Extreme and Tim and Eric. And of course, Tim Heidecker is in every season of I Think You Should Leave. So if you're a fan of Tim and Eric, you'll see him. I was kind of surprised he wasn't in the film, to be honest. They also, by the way, Tim Robinson and Sam Richardson have another show called Detroiters, which is also very funny. It's more of a traditional sitcom, and it's the last maybe the last sitcom in the world to have a chance, and it ran for 2 seasons. It was really funny, but yeah, I really enjoy the kind of absurdist style of humor and taking personality quirks and blowing them up to an extreme is my kind of humor. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. We want to thank you guys for following, subscribing, liking, commenting down below. Tell us what you thought about the film after you see it and what films you'd like us to cover in the future. And on that note, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Film Yappers. We appreciate your support, which you can show by subscribing to the channel, clicking the thumbs up like button below, and sharing with your friends, neighbors, and cousins. We will see you on the next episode of the Film Yappers.